Hello, everyone. My name is Colleen Vincent, and I'm the Vice President of Community for the James Beard Foundation. Welcome to today's webinar presented by White Claw Hard Seltzer, Reinventing the Bar and Cocktail. So with safely gathering together in bars still a long way off from most, bartenders and mixologists have to be resilient and imaginative to find new business models. So today we will be having a spirited conversation about cocktail kits, online recipe sharing, marketing, branding, and how to monetize your skills, even during social distancing. But first, how the webinar works. So it's being recorded, and by next week, the recording will be available along with past webinars on the events page at openforgood.com. Please save your questions for the end as time allows, but feel free to write them in the webinar toolbar during the course, and we'll try to get to them before the end of this broadcast. If you are having technical difficulties, please also use the webinar toolbar, and we'll do what we can to troubleshoot. So today I am very pleased to introduce a roster of incredible women who are experts in mixology and also branding. Our first guest, Lucky Michaels, is a personal friend, international speaker, mixologist, photographer, trans activist, and on the National Advisory Council on LGBTQ homeless youth. She is the first out trans woman ever featured at the James Beard House, and hopefully not the last, and likes to mix history into the cocktail shaker as she draws you in with her passion for hospitality. She is on the James Beard Foundation's Women's Leadership Advisory Committee and also an advisory board member of Women in Hospitality United. Our next guest is Jess Gutierrez-Switaj, aka the Sauceress. She was raised in Harrisburg, PA, and spent 10 years in Phoenix and calls Brooklyn her home. She bartended her way through college for fashion design, a degree which led her to a career in product styling, mainly textile-based. But she always loved the art of the cocktail, crafting, and finally realized that her dream of one day bartending again, a mere 4 weeks before the pandemic shut down all the bars in the city. Unemployment from her full-time job as well called for a change in course, and she suddenly found herself pivoting her styling skills and eye for detail, and turned her mixology hobby into a business as a semi-professional cocktail photographer. And now she spends her days creating unconventional recipes and unique drink photos from the comfort of her own home. Our next guest is LaShana Daniels. Do It for the Culture, Cocktail Culture is a brand that promotes Black contributions in a celebratory way, whether it be telling stories of Black history figures through a cocktail, revealing slavery's impact on the liquor industry, or building awareness of Black-owned liquor brands. Her focus is to share Black stories. She wants to enlighten, educate, and unify people from all backgrounds. As an events manager with 10 years plus hospitality experience, LaShana is passionate about history and the Black experience, and she currently resides in New York. And our last, but certainly not least guest is branding expert Kysha Harris, who runs SCHOP. She is the new food editor at The Spruce Eats and is a 14-year food entrepreneur, chef, producer, writer, consultant, and food editor at the New York Amsterdam News food section. So first, I want to welcome all of you. We have put everyone's social media handles also on this chart you're seeing here, so you'll have an opportunity to see some of their really beautiful and amazing branding work. So my first question will be to Kysha. So Kysha, if you will, give us an overview of how the pandemic has changed the art of the professional brand. I know we've been moving in this space as a culture from professional and personal kind of blurring together. But prior to the pandemic, professional, there was still a hard line. People still had official titles attached to whatever it was that they did for a living, as a career, for money. And now we're in the pandemic, and people who have had consumer facing jobs, and none more so than mixologists and bartenders, have to somehow share their passion while not being able to actually live it out the way it once was. So if you could just talk about the changes that you have seen.
Yeah, I first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. This is such a great opportunity, and to be with these beautiful women who are passionate about what they do and sharing that with all of you out there. So thank you so much, Colleen and James Beard Foundation. I've actually been in food for 18 years, and so I've really seen an arc in a lot of things that have happened, and personal arcs for me as well. I think to be an entrepreneur, to be in in any of these positions, it's really about skin in the game, and you have to develop it over time. And so I think that, having to wake up every morning and say, what am I worth today? And being able to communicate that to people and stand your ground. And should those people not want to pay you that, then they're not your client, and you have to be resolved with that. And I say all that to say that, this has been an interesting time for me. I'm new to the Spruce Seeds, and I'm so excited to be there. But having been in food for 18 years and started off as private chefing and really evolved into my writing career, I'm the associate producer for Harlem Eat Up. I was the culinary producer on Hot Ones, the game show. I've done food television. I've done all of those things, but all of that is to say, once you find your core competence, you have to be able to find channels that service that. And I think that is what led me to that. So to answer your question, we are prime. You are your own brand. You are prime to make it whatever you want to make it, and to define yourself. And the reason why we're primed is because we get up every day and we do it. We get up every day and we do it. We know what goes in is what's going to come out. And so I think that it is our time to think outside of the box and be valued for it. And I would, say specifically for African American women, this is our time, and we must be able to pivot as we do, and find resolve in what we do and what we have to offer. And that can be done, I feel, in myriad ways. I feel I'm seeing great stuff by mixologists that are doing pre-made drinks. And, I think there's opportunities out there for them to make these cocktails, find a bottler, find somebody that is, find a kitchen where they can do it and really express themselves that way. And also, social media is what it is. It's what connects us right now. And we have to be really targeted in terms of what we're doing. The content needs to matter. You need to spend the time, just don't throw stuff up there. Spend the time in order to reach out to your brands. Every week I cook, and in my stories, it takes me forever. My post takes me forever because I want to make sure I have the right hashtags. I have short form and long form hashtags that I'm targeting these brands. And when you do that on a consistent basis, they start to reach back out to you, and they look at you as an expert, and they want to be engaged with you. I mean, I think White Claw is here for many reasons, but for the talent of these women here that are before us. So it's about digging down a little further, digging down further in yourself, in your passion, and pouring that out without reserve.
Thank you, Kysha. So, so let's talk about the personal stories. So, Jess, let's talk a little bit more about your professional and personal brand strategy prior to COVID. Now, I know you've just returned to bartending, very much this year, but let's talk about what, if any, if you had a personal and professional branding strategies and how those intersect, if at all.
Okay. Well, really, before the pandemic, I guess I would say I didn't have a strategy for that, because what I was doing was almost more of a hobby, really. And I had just begun doing that maybe like October, November of 2019. And I was working full time at my regular job. So that was kind of just like a thing that I would do if I had time, or if I had a good idea that I wanted to kind of put online and share. And my Instagram, where I do most of my work, actually just started for me personally as a place that I could document my recipes so I wouldn't lose them or forget them, and also to share with like other people who are interested in a similar thing. But then, as I said, I lost my full-time job in March, middle of April, and kind of had to say, like, where can I take what interests me, because that's really the only thing that I have now, and figure out a way to help pay the rent with it. And so my brand, I guess, I needed to focus a little bit more, because my strategy then was actually reaching out, as Kysha said, to, companies that you're interacting with that see you, that realize that you're there and you have like potential for them, and trying to see, how I could rein them in to be interested in what I was doing and hopefully make money off of it eventually.
Thank you, Jess. And LaShana, what was your personal and or professional strategy prior to COVID?
Well, the funny thing is, Do It for the Cocktail Culture was created during COVID. So prior to that, I was working as an events manager in LA. So I'm originally from New York, and I wanted to move back. And once the pandemic hit, I lost pretty much 2 months of work in 1 week, and decided, hey, gotta go back home now, and it's time. So it worked out well in that sense. But I was definitely trying to figure out how to still work in events during a pandemic. And I knew virtual events was becoming a thing that everybody was moving towards. So I decided to do that. But after George Floyd's death, I kind of pivoted a little bit, and I was like, I'm really interested in expressing Black history, Black stories, trying to just educate people who are looking for ways to learn more about the Black experience in America. So then, by some chain of events that happened, I ended up making Do It for the Cocktail Culture. And once I did that, I didn't really have an idea for the brand. And I just thought, I just wanted to share Black stories through cocktails. I thought that was fun.
Love it.
And thank you.
I love that.
So I was like, yeah, this is completely fun. But then I started thinking, you know what? Let me try to implement monetization strategies. Let me try to do virtual events, because if we weren't having a pandemic right now, that's what I would be doing, just trying to think of what I would be doing if there wasn't a pandemic, and trying to make it fit within the pandemic is pretty much how I go through this process. A lot of the time people help me, like I collaborate with a lot of people, so they give me ideas, which is very helpful. I noticed the network helps to help me grow. Learning from people, all those different type of things are very important. So I think I answered your question.
Thank you, Donna. And Lucky, same question. What was your personal and or professional brand strategy prior to COVID?
So prior to COVID, thanks for having me. This panels are great so far, loving it. So prior to COVID, I was very much in line with telling trans stories behind the bar. So, working at the New York Historical Society for 7 years as the mixologist, I liked to mix a little history in with the drinks, because when you're sitting at the bar, you have a captive audience, and either you become their therapist or listen to their day, or you turn that on whoever you're with, and start doing some advocacy. So start pushing trans narratives and doing some of that work, which I really enjoyed, kind of mixing that like personal and professional in a way. I mean, they're going to sit there and they're drinking your drinks, and the more drinks that you come up and give them some of that history, it really brought me a lot to life, and educated them on things like Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson, and so not only the history of the trans community, but also the history of cocktails. So being in the Historical Society, it just made sense. An exhibition would come through, and I'd be like, okay, how can I relate to this to a period of time? How can I introduce them to some folks that they might not know about, or some of our history that often gets lost. And just prior to the pandemic, the Friday before the pandemic was International Women's Day. I was so grateful that the layoff happened the week later, because all of the events there at the Beard House got furloughed along with the rest of us. So I was featured there with Elizabeth Faulkner and a number of other women. And I think it's really important that, when we're doing stuff like this, especially women focused, that we include trans folks. And prior to the pandemic, I was really pushing for, diversity, equity, and inclusion within the hospitality industry, because this is a perfect opportunity to bring in vulnerable populations, right? Both front of house, back of house. And so I was, working on creating a pipeline for trans individuals, and, moving into the pandemic, things have changed, right? So, those that were most marginal become, even more so, and have less opportunities, in the changing environment. But yeah, my personal and professional brand strategy prior to that remains, true. I've done policy work for LGBTQ individuals for over 25 years now.
Thank you, Lucky. And so to the broader panel, so how, I say how, but have they, how have the gathering restrictions kind of challenged and inspired the work that you do? Because, more than anything else, this is a high touch industry, and none more so than the work you all do. So, we'll kind of do this organically. Whoever feels inspired to respond first, please feel free to do so.
I would like to. I mean, I'm not like these other wonderful women, but I think that thing. I don't think any of us really knows it until it happens. And I'm a firm believer that everything you've done is going to lead you to the next step. So I think I would challenge everyone out there to say, okay, what have I done in the last 5 years? What have I done in the last 2 years? What are the important things that are going to serve me in this moment? And I think that's where the creativity really kind of comes in. For example, LaShana, created this in the pandemic, and that's a major feat to do, and to pivot so quickly. But I think that I see such wonderful things. I participated in a wine tasting, and it was a distributor. They sent us all the wines, but everyone was so engaged in what that was. And I think there's an idea there for some of these great mixologists to, again, find these brands that want your point of view. What do you bring unique to the table that you can offer them? So they might have a battery of spirits, but you only, LaShana's going to tell the story. Only Lucky's going to tell the story. That's how those great ideas are born. And a lot of these brands don't know it yet. This medium that we have right here defines us, but also refines us. Ooh, I like that one.
Embroider.
Right?
End up, she gonna embroider it. She gonna.
Right?
Make some merch.
Oh goodness. But no, let's talk about it. I mean, the reason I asked this type of question is certainly like, those of us that enjoy history and art and culture know that, a tremendous amount of creativity is born from restriction. And so we can't gather. So I'm just wondering how, and feel free to go on a little tangent, but like, how have they like inspired? I know they're certainly challenging, and if you could talk more about that, that would be great as well. But how have they inspired your work? So I'll start with Jess.
Well, let's see. I had a lot more free time throughout this, so I was like, there's just no excuses to be lazy about the things that I want to do anymore. I really have to like buckle down, get up early, and start just like doing everything on my to-do list every day. So restrictions for me, obviously the bar that I was working at, like any of you who are working at a bar, closed. And I had actually talked to them about, did they want to think about when they started letting people do like the to-go cocktails and stuff like that, but no, they didn't want to do it. And so I was like, great, I have to still pay the rent. I don't want to leave New York City. What am I going to do? And it was actually my husband who kind of jokingly was like, oh, you should throw all your booze in the trunk and just drive around your friends' houses and make them cocktails on the go. And I was like, I don't think that's exactly legal, but we could do something. And so we, as Colleen, as you had mentioned, a friend of mine actually was kind of the one who got all this rolling for me. He's like, oh, you should do, you know, little to-go kits and stuff that people can have in their home and still have that experience of like, you have a really interesting cocktail, but it's not something you just make at yourself. It's not like rum and Coke. It's like when you go to a cocktail bar, you want a special experience like that. And so for me, what I did was try and always have like original recipes that I had made up with strange things that, you know, you're never going to go buy yourself a bottle of like saffron liqueur, but I have it and you can try it this week. So that for me was the change there. Was I still really wanted to be able to do what I was passionate about, which was making drinks, and be able to share them with people who could still experience like a special moment from what they were, you know, having with me, I guess.
Wow. And LaShana, you talked a little bit about it more, you know, around like the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. But you know, certainly, and they've inspired you. But I just wanted to know more about how the gathering restrictions, I mean, have kind of like changed and challenged and inspired your work.
Yeah, so I definitely have been trying to figure out, because I want this page to be outside of social media. I want this to be a community movement, you know, if possible. So the ways that I have started implementing that is I've started to do live events. The first live event I did was right before Thanksgiving. And I work with mixologists. I have a particular series I do called Soul Sip Sundays, which is inspired by soul food dishes. So we created a live event and we sent out cocktail kits to go along with the event, so that people could feel like, you know, they have that whole bar experience virtually. Try to get back to that casual, I'm out with people and we're just talking and we have questions about the drinks, and, you know, we love to just create a conversation around that. So, you know, I have been pivoting in that direction. Again, I'm still trying to figure out day by day how to, you know, get people to feel like they're together, even though we aren't.
Right.
I have confidence in you.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Keep that skin in the game.
And Lucky, how have the gathering restrictions challenged and inspired your work?
So yeah, I mean the challenges are, you know, pretty obvious. So I'm gonna stick with the inspiration. So, you know, I mean, I definitely somebody who has kind of engaged in the like step up, step back, and you know, really see rest as resistance in this you know, new era that we're living in. And you know, obviously we still get to figure out how to make a living in doing so. And I really have focused a lot of my energy on some of the interviews that I've done. You know, I did an amazing podcast with Simone Scott and a documentary with Elizabeth Faulkner, and was on America's Test Kitchen, and definitely done some equity work, and really focused on getting paid to do that. You know, when I was sitting behind the bar, it was one thing, right? Because I was really enjoying doing the cocktail, etc. And now that we're in this like new era where I am not going into work every night and setting up my bar and then have access to, you know, whatever liquor supplies that are, you know, behind the bar there, right? Like my bar at home is very different than the bar that I have at work. And so the supplies that I have in order to do, you know, cocktail features on America's Test Kitchen are going to be very different than the cocktails that I was able to do when I was just sitting and kikiing with whoever was coming in to, you know, have the experience. So I've really kind of pushed the envelope with making sure that I get paid for the equity labor that I'm doing in addition to introducing a new cocktail, because I like to put a unique brand of both of those together, and I need to be paid to do so. And so far that has been working well when it happens. You know, I definitely have built a community of folks within the hospitality industry, and my name is out there. So when events happen or interview requests come in, I'm able to like advocate on behalf of myself and make sure that I get paid for the labor that I really know that there's not somebody else, you know, who is a trans woman out here doing this kind of work, right? And so to be paid a living wage for that labor is really important. And in addition to that, like I definitely have wanted to approach brands because right now liquor companies, they have the money, right? Here in the pandemic, the liquor companies are bringing in the money, and so the responsibility falls on the liquor brands to make sure that, you know, in inventing the cocktail and the community, the hospitality industry, they're focusing on women, Black folks, and you know, trans folks, really LGBTQ folks, to really make sure that, you know, the inclusion ends up happening. You know, I would really love to, you know, utilize funds from liquor brands to make sure that that work is being done, because there are so many people in this industry that are going without right now because they don't have the same capacity to, or a brand to begin with, right? Like I think of all the folks who, you know, I brought to the table, you know, there at the James Beard Foundation and other events that I've gone to, they don't have the same kind of access or brand that, you know, I'm fortunate to have. So how do we have conversations with them or you know, utilize liquor funds to make sure they're getting paid as well, right?
Question for you, Lucky. Do you have any idea on like how to begin that process?
So I've been doing some of that process. You know, I would love to say that, you know, it's going really well for me. You know, so I started with the brands that, you know, I was already focusing on while I was being featured at the Beard Foundation and other events, right? So I would feature brands like Illegal Mezcal, for example. You know, half of their executive board are women, right? The COO, the CFO, and the VP of marketing are all women. So it made sense for me to go to some of these brands who I have been promoting for no money, right? Like, mind you, I'm not getting any coin out of, you know, that relationship. I just really believe in, you know, women-led or Black-led companies, and so definitely want to give them the spotlight. So I started there. So far, you know, I haven't had as much success in leveraging the funds from those places. So I have, you know, reached out to the folks that I know, both on social media and the emails that I had, and said, hey, we are in this new situation. I understand that, you know, liquor companies give out sponsorships of some sort, and then, you know, you pitch the idea to the, you know, their, you know, board, and so far, you know, the supporting trans folks in the hospitality industry doesn't tend to be high on the liquor companies' radars. But, you know, I really believe that if you were to go and do that, you know, you might actually have some success. So it really is a matter of like looking at the history of who the liquor brand is already supporting. So there's a couple that are obvious ones for me, like Absolute, you know, is very much a LGBTQ forward liquor company. So it would make sense for me to roll up into Absolute and do my pitch over there.
Yeah.
So far, most of the, you know, most of that work has been disheartening, and people are like, oh, it's the pandemic. And, you know, looking at their sales, that they're just feeding you a line. So
I would, you know, and I would interject to say that certainly we know, and it's not anecdotal, that people are drinking a lot more at home. And so, you know, what I see, you know, and this is, you know, moderator injecting into the conversation, but what I see is more and more of this kind of information sharing among this particular community, and certainly, you know, certainly like strategy sessions, kind of like this one as well, because everyone has a niche to fill. You know, the mixologist is not just a mixologist. The mixologist is a weaver. stories, of fantasies, of camaraderie, and certainly, you know, somebody that people both celebrate with, but also commiserate with, and now more than ever. So, you know, I want to talk about like some entrepreneurial shifts and transformations that you see coming, and you know, for yourself. And you know, I understand that they might not be fully formed, as you know, when we talk about, oh, we're in a pandemic, that also means that, you know, people's thoughts aren't all, you know, solidified, and nobody's, you know, people haven't drawn up official plans, but, you know, tapping into the creativity of this group. I would love to hear like what you see coming, and you know, bearing in mind that we may be able to gather in person in the foreseeable future, but that doesn't mean tomorrow or even like 5 months from now. But what are some of the entrepreneurial shifts and transformations that you see, maybe not just for yourself, but for, you know, other people in this consumer facing space? So LaShana, we'll start with you on that one.
So yeah, I actually have been working with Duke University. They reached out to me, they're a Black Alumni Association, and they decided to do their holiday party virtual this year.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, so they reached out to me. They said, you know, they kind of want me to be the focus, and they also wanted me to honor a specific Black alumni from Duke, because the woman's name is Wilhelmina Rubin Cook. She has a building being named after her, or sorry, that was named after her this year. So they were like, you know, let's do a cocktail to tell her story and honor her at the holiday party. So, you know, for now, for me, I've definitely seen that there is a need. It's in universities, definitely historical Black colleges as well, to try to just offer my services in a fun way to educate people. That's, you know, kind of one of the things I see so far.
Yeah. Lucky?
Lucky, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to piggyback a little bit off of what LaShana said, because I had this little thing happen, and it was regarding these holiday parties. There's so many brands, so many companies that have annual holiday parties that spend thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on.
Yes.
So I think we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, but I think that's a great opportunity for mixologists. If you have a 1, 2, 3 degrees of separation from a large company, and you can offer something, a holiday thing where you can gather ingredients, it being sent out to the employees, and then create the Zoom or whatever meeting platform, I think that would be really great. Lucky, so sorry.
You're fine, Kysha. I definitely appreciate the information. I need to find a holiday party. I need to find a brand. I need to find somebody who has a connection to somebody that's like, I know a trans mixologist who would be great, right? Like, I got a very big personality. I'm really fun to be around. So now I need to find a holiday party.
For sure. So, Red Bull, I feel like would love you too. For sure. Like something like that. Yeah.
I'm taking notes.
Me too. I'm taking notes this whole.
I took down Wilhelmina Rubin Cook to like Google all of the information so that I told myself after the fact, so that I know what we're talking about here, right? Because that's the what happens in this, right? Like that's what happens in community, and that's the part of the being behind a bar that I miss, right? Like I could give all sorts of information, but if I don't like go home and then like do the work later and educate myself, then what's it all for, right? Is it just for the, you know, the drink? So anyways, what entrepreneurial transformations or shifts have you made or under consideration, I guess was the question that Colleen so lovingly asked me. So you know, what I would love to do, you know, in a dream world is, you know, leverage, you know, liquor funds, you know, and basically be, you know, like a Robin Hood of like, you know, and funnel that money towards trans folks, and really talk about like trans food justice. You know, I think there's a real gap in information around food insecurity amongst the trans community. And I really think it's an opportunity for trans folks to tell their own stories and like what food justice means for them, you know, so the amount of folks who really come to the hospitality industry or the food and beverage industry who come from a food insecurity background, it would be great to really kind of leverage that funding. So in a dream world, if the money were rolling in, but you know, at this point in my career, I'm not doing all the labor and not getting paid for it. You know, like I have done enough unpaid labor as a trans woman that like I'm good. You know, I did nonprofit management for over 10 years. Like I'm good. Like I'm not, you know, here to not get paid. So if I'm not getting paid for it, but in a dream world, if I had the funds, I would really funnel the funds to trans folks to be able to talk about what food justice means for them. And, you know, I would love to go more into that, but this is not the webinar for it.
Thank you, Lucky. Jess?
I guess one of the changes that I've noticed most from my perspective, which a lot of it is like Instagram based and social media, things like that, are that brands like, you know, Absolute or whoever you mentioned, they can't interact with you in a bar environment right now. You know, they can advertise to you like in magazines or TV, but you know, normally where they're you know, in your face the most is in a bar or in a restaurant, and they don't have that anymore. So I've personally seen like a uptick in participation, I guess, from brand accounts on social media, where before, say if I make a cocktail and I tag like whatever brand, and sometimes they'll come and they'll put like a little emoji in your comments, and great, they saw it, they don't care. But these days they really want to, you know, let you know that they see what you've done, and they want to let other people know that they're there and they're paying attention. Like they'll comment on things, they'll repost your things. And yes, while that's not making us money right now, it could be. And I also think that because of this, a lot of these brands are seeing the value in the community more than just like, you know, a big name advertiser or something for that. Like they're seeing that people that are using their product are connecting with them, they're connecting with other people, and it's more valuable than what they had before.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's something to be said about participating in a growing community as online, as opposed to one that's already like locked and loaded and fully formed, because you have an option. There's an option to kind of like grow and build along, you know, with regard to like brand loyalty, and certainly like the trust factor. You know, the people that deliberately follow somebody who has a handful of followers likely know that person and are more likely to trust that what that person says tastes good, looks good, smells good, feels good, is the thing. But also because those people are following that person because they want to support that person in particular. And there's always something to be said about getting in the ground floor of things, you know, kind of like the stock market. Like, oh, that stock, you know, that's 10 cents right now. Well, let me tell you what's going to happen within 2 years is going to make XYZ product. Might as well buy it now and invest and just stick around and see the growth happen. You know, and so, you know, with regard that particular strategy is for brands, but in the meantime, and I want to ask your expertise, like, you know, particularly as a journalist here, Kysha, you know, like with regard to marketing and PR strategies, what we're talking about are people who are solopreneurs, if you want to call it that, people who don't have budgets, and who are, you know, just figuring stuff out. And while yes, there are a lot of things going on in virtual world right now, you know, there's enough of a distinction that you're finding like relevant, interesting, engaging content all the time. So how do solopreneurs like get in front of, you know, media? You know, like how do they get how do they distinguish their brands, like, you know, and of course we've heard these women's stories in particular, but are there some broad strokes that you can identify?
Yes, I wanted to take it back to the previous question and add to that. You know, I I still am an entrepreneur. I'm working for a company now, and I feel very fortunate that I had a career in corporate and entertainment and marketing, no, music, film, and advertising, and went into entrepreneurship after 9/11. And I felt like I was young enough and I was stupid enough that I could do this. And again, skin in the game got me to that line. And my time, again, building on those stepping stones, when I worked at Def Jam. I worked with great artists and I loved it. It was a great opportunity to watch creatives work and monetize creative energy. And how do you do that? There's myriad channels with which to do that. And it will lead into your next question. So what I found is, yeah, I love to cook. You know, I would see all these people in hip hop like, oh, you work at Def Jam. That's so amazing. I want to be a hip hop star. Well, you can be hip hop and be a lawyer. You can be a doctor. You can be whatever you can be hip hop and still be all those things. So I extrapolate that to being, you know, what I do. I love food. I love being a food entrepreneur. I loved creating a business from nothing and manifesting it. But in that lane, finding that core competence, there's so many other things that you can do. And within this pandemic, you know, anybody that says they're an entrepreneur and says, I'm the idea person, I really don't know how to do the other stuff. No. You've got to be the bookkeeper. You've got to do the R&D. You've got to do everything. And what that means is that you're capable of doing other things within your field. So ladies, if you write, start writing. Start not just doing it into the ether, but really going after, you know, my colleagues at liquor.com. They're freelance writers. They're looking for people to come and talk candidly and officially about liquor. Finding those channels that can support what you do and use that thing as the tool to get you to the next step. So, you know, lucky if you're doing you're very front and center with what you're doing, write about that. It's so specific. And thinking about what you said, I did a panel at the top of the year with Mark Bittman at CUNY, the School of Food Justice. I'm getting it completely wrong, but you should have been on that dais. That was your time to do that. And opportunities like that, like this, is your perfect opportunity to showcase what you can do and to ideate and to reach for the stars. And so I think we're all entrepreneurs. We're all, and I don't know if I necessarily like the word solopreneurs, honestly, because I do feel like it's a language that we speak. And to do what we do, we've got to motivate people around us to get what we want done. And even at my job, I think I consider myself an intrapreneur. I really have to work with my team in order to deliver the stuff. And really, I'm like a newbie now, so I'm really learning a lot, which is amazing. And those are the tools that I can put into the coffers and really push back out in a dynamic way. And I think this time where we're not defining but refining, those are the things that you have to say to yourself, listen, I might not be a writer, but I can put 400 words together. I can put 200 words together. I can put a video together. I have a ring light. I've got a camera. I've got a stocked bar. I've got a great spirit. Let me start creating content that will serve me, but will continue to build up my brand.
Awesome.
I have a question, sorry.
Yeah.
For Kysha, because you brought up liquor.com, and did you intend to say like us reaching out to them, or how do you see that connection being built?
I think the best thing to do, I'm very new, and I think hopefully some of my colleagues are watching, and thank you guys so much for watching. I think I need to defer to them I need to find out from them the best way to do that, and we can stay in touch, and I can offer that up to Colleen, to you guys. But I think your voices are so unique and powerful, and you've done so much. And just like I feel in this position, I love what I was doing before, but to be able to have a bigger platform by which to share my skill is the thing that gives me chills, vibrates me higher, because I know I have it. And I think you ladies have it. I think, everyone out there, you guys have it. And, it's easy to get sad and depressed about what this is. because that's a muscle that we're used to working as women. But if, you know, in the moment you make a different choice and know that there's something inside of you that's so much greater than you could even imagine, that's where the real beauty lies. And that's where the real uniqueness of who you are lies.
And while this, I still have questions, but, you know, in the meantime, you know, please, those that are watching, please feel free to put any questions in the chat. You know, so what I've heard here, you know, among other things is that, you know, that cocktail making in and of itself is a way to channel, you know, styling skills, storytelling skills, you know, community building skills, and that, you know, that creative fields such as yours are, people can actually make money, you know. So, you know, we talked about the brands, but, you know, I would like to ask a little bit about the patrons, because oftentimes, like sports fields, mixologists tend to gain a little following from their, you know, from their patrons. So have you, you know, how do you, have you, if you haven't, you know, how do you recommend keeping in touch with those people that supported you, you know, behind the bar? I know, LaShana, your case is a little bit different coming from the event management space, but there's still people, you know, people that knew you in that particular capacity, and certainly you've acquired more people in this capacity. How do you communicate with those people who held it down for you before the pandemic? So we will start with, Lucky, then Jess, then LaShana, and then Kysha to round this all out.
So the patrons, you know, I honestly, like, most important people, right? They're paying my bill. You know, so I have actually kept in touch with some of the, you know, big spenders, as it were, you know, the folks that, you know, would come to the James Beard Foundation or such. I have kept in touch either via social media. I've sent texts. The piece that I haven't done, though, and I've considered, is, you know, setting up a Patreon or some way for them to support who I am and what I'm doing in the here and now. You know, there were people who definitely kind of, you know, came to my bar on the regular, Mark Murphy, and, you know, some folks who were just like regulars, and I absolutely have kept in touch, you know, most of the time via, you know, Instagram, right? Like, I'm gonna follow and blow up their stuff on social media when it's happening, but I have reached out via text to some of those folks who, you know, were really paying my bills, right? You know, and that the beauty behind the bar is, you know, you really have the opportunity to make a lot more money for less hours.
Mm-hmm.
In the pandemic, we're not afforded that sort of thing, and I know a lot of people who have set up the Patreons to, like, make sure that they're getting supported. So I think that's the next step, you know, so that those, you know, folks can be paying my bills when, right, you know, I'm unable to eat.
Jess?
Well, for me, I had only started bartending again about 4 weeks before, you know, all the bars got shut down. So I didn't really have a lot of patron interaction, but I did have a handful of people that I, you know, did become close with in that short time, that would come in like a few times a week, things like that. And, you know, they connected with me on social media as well. And when we started doing our delivery service, actually a lot of those people would order from me every week. So that was nice. And it was fun because, you know, some of the people that we delivered to were clients from the bar, and a lot of them were just friends or friends of friends. And the best part of all that, I think, for everybody was that for a little while, I was the only person they might see that whole week. When I pulled up to their door and, like, dropped off their bag full of cocktails and, like, waved from the street. And so many of those people would say, oh, this is the most fun, like, I've had, you know, this entire weekend, because I got to see a person, and now I also have these awesome cocktails. So we did try to stay in touch with a lot of those people that hopefully I'll get to see in an actual bar again someday.
Yeah. LaShana?
Yeah, so I actually have created a Patreon. You know, I'm still trying to figure out how all of the process works. I know a lot of people said that they feel connected to people through videos and they've gotten more Patreon subscribers from that. So, you know, I'm trying to work my way into that. Also building an email list. I know that can be very vital to like just sending out blasts, letting people know what's going on because, you know, fortunately the Instagram algorithm is always changing. People don't necessarily see your content all the time, don't know what's going on. So I just try to figure out ways outside of social media to reach people. So that's the way I'm always brainstorming. Also, just being in people's DMs and on their pages and supporting their work. I think that's very important. So it doesn't feel like it's one-sided or people feel like they have a relationship and a bond with you. So I'm always trying to think of a perspective of not necessarily trying to sell to people, but build a relationship and engage with people.
Thank you, LaShana.
Mhm.
Kysha?
Yes. So, of course, I'm not a bartender, but I was just listening to what the ladies were saying. And, you know, lucky for you, I would say it is about going a step beyond even what you think you can do. If you have the ear of people like Mark Murphy and these people, it's not just about, it is about coming to them with opportunities that are good for them and good for you. And I mean, I'm just meeting you now, and I know that you can really do that. You know, it's saying this is the lucky plan, and this is what I'm going to do over the next 3 months. These are the events that I have planned. These are the virtual events. This is what I'm doing, and this is where I see myself in 3 months. God willing, we get a vaccine or whatever. This is what I'll be primed to do. And what I need is this amount of money in order to get me there. And I'd like you to become an investor in this process with me. You know, I think overall, and I've been a victim, you know, not a victim to this, but I've been accused of this, is that, you know, I've never had a mentor in my life. I've never had anybody that kind of told me how to go. I really have to figure it out on my own. I don't necessarily say that's a good or a bad thing, but I do know that people that are busy, regardless of the pandemic, it's never, if you sit down and talk with them, they're not there to tell you what to do. They're there to execute your vision. So if you say, hey, Mark Murphy, I know that this chef is doing this, they're closing down these bars or whatever they're doing, and I have this plan, and I'd like you to call so-and-so, and to the specifics, this is what I need from you. People are so willing to help you, meet you halfway, but not to do it for you. And so I mean, for all of you, I think that this is, again, put pen to paper, wake up in the middle of the night. Oh my God, I love this idea. Let me do that. And so I know it's in you. I can see it's all in you from what you've done and how you've pivoted. I wanted to add to LaShana, I have a new obsession with vintage clothing. And she does a virtual shopping hour, virtual shopping on Tuesday nights. It's called Zingara Vintage. And this is a Zingara vintage piece. I have a whole bunch of vintage terry cloth things. And I say all that to say is the people that are on there come there every week, yes, to buy, but also to be part of a community. And I really believe that if you can figure out a way, like she makes money, she sells it, she sends it to you. If you guys can figure out a way in order to do the same thing, to create that sense of community that's beyond doing posts and beyond doing, that's where you have. I love this, Jess. I love the bar in the car. I mean, I think that, I'd ask the city if you could legally do it. I really would. I would see if you can walk down the street with a bottled, let me show you one thing. I'm sorry, Colleen, hold on.
It's fine, Kysha. It's all good.
I love showing up.
I'm waiting for her to come back, but I have some I do have some things that I can share with both you all and the audience. But Kysha, go ahead and show your little.
Yes. So this is a craft cocktail bar and Japanese bar, and it's called ROKC. It's up in here in Harlem. And these were 2 cocktails. And this one was just the base, and it came with a small bottle of Fever Tree. And I just thought that was just so lovely. And this is a hot sauce bottle. I love that. and another hot sauce bottle from 67 Orange. And there were such great blends. So Jeff, I really would, you know, you might be a trendsetter. Go and find out from the city. If people can walk around and buy, they have to buy something to eat, they have to buy a soup. And so these places give out like a potage or something free of charge just so they can sell it. You figure out what you can do, you know?
And some of the other opportunities, and I was thinking that when we were, you know, when I started going through everybody's Instagram and like being very inspired by all the things that people do, is that, you know, the mixology is the gateway, and it's something that can, you know, in pandemic start with close friends and family. It starts with, you can start with selling the ingredients and recommending people buy the liqueurs, or partnering with a brand, you know, or, you know, partnering with the restaurants and the bars themselves, you know, because they have the licenses, or, you know, along the same lines of LaShana, selling the experience itself, selling tickets to the experience itself, or in the case of Lucky, using that experience as a gateway to writing opportunities. Certainly, you know, styling, food styling is still a thing, opportunities, photography opportunities. Like there's a myriad of ways that you can do this while you still figure the rest out. And, you know, we're talking about the Patreon, you know, we get to the crux of it is that you start with the people that you know, right? People you know will support you, you know, they will support you. And now more so than ever, people feel like, people understand, I think, more now, culturally, things that we took for granted, like the communal experience of mixology and the art of it. I think people now recognize what kind of value they add culturally and are willing to pay for it, you know, and the opportunity can translate into many other creative opportunities. I mean, I love the pivots that all of you have made. And, you know, if you can obviously take some downtime to think about it, you know, if that is a privilege you have right now, take downtime to think about it, or gather your people or talk to your community. I think, you know, prior to COVID, you know, a lot of different parts of our industry may have felt it necessary to like hold information. You know, think of it as like competitive such and such. But what I hear from everyone here is everybody has their own niche and should not be afraid to share those strategies with one another. You know, this has been a really amazing panel. I am so pleased with like how wonderful and inspiring this all has been. You know, first I would like to thank White Claw for allowing us to pull this panel together.
Thank you, White Claw.
It's like, it's so brilliant. There's so much brilliance here. And, you know, even though I haven't gotten to interact with all of the attendees, the fact that you all came in speaks to the fact that, you know, there's a lot of brilliance lurking, you know, in the background. So, you know, feel free to email us at impact@jamesbeard.org if you have further questions, or, you know, would just like to chime in with your thoughts. Make sure that you follow the handles of all these amazing women. First of all, they've got just pretty stuff going on their IGs, but also, you know, I think the more that we gather the experiences of others, the less we'll be afraid to translate our own experience, you know, into activism, storytelling, and styling. You know, and then Kysha just like having a career that kind of runs the gamut of the industry and like taking a leap. This is one of those like take a leap time periods that, you know, it will all look back in hindsight. And I think, you know, if you all have it in you, you know, document what's going on in your own way, because I suspect there'll be a lot of really great culinary books coming out of this time period. You know, you won't make money off it, but that won't make you money. But it is great. It's
Good
really
tool.
And thank you all so much. I'd like to thank,
Thank you.
as usual, behind the scenes, I'd like to thank Debbie and Lauren for, making sure everything works in the background so I could enjoy this really great conversation. Thank you, Jess, LaShana, Lucky, and Kysha. I hope we all keep in touch. This has been really amazing. So thank you again, White Claw, and
Thank
thank
you,
you again.
Colleen. Thank you, Colleen.
And I
Thanks.
love and have a wonderful rest of your week. This recording will be available in about a week from now, and we'll be sure to share it out to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
everyone.
Refine, not define.
Fine, not
Okay.